Hi guys, it's Roy from Bellados3D here, and in this short series of videos I'll be creating clutter objects. These are objects that you scatter around a scene to make it more lived in. And in this video I will be creating some books for our scene. So without much more ado, let's get on with the modelling. Okay, we're starting with Blender, and for a change we're going to keep the default cube because we're going to make our books out of a cube. And our books are actually quite simple shapes and designs, so they're not too hard to create. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into edit mode. I'm going to press S to scale and Z to scale on the Z axis. I'm just going to bring it down to about the thickness of the book that we need. And I'm going to do the same S and Y and just sort of bring it out a bit to give it more of a book size. S and Y, maybe a bit thinner. Bring it in a bit there. Right. Okay, so let's see how we want to do this. We want to curve off the spine a little bit, and obviously we want to inset the pages. So let's start by adding some loop cuts, and we go into front orthographic mode with the one on the numpad, and I'm going to define the cover. So let's press R and scroll up once to get 2 loop cuts, and press S and Z, and we will scale them up, and I think about there should do it. And that's the definition for our cover. Now we want to curve this off a little bit, so let's press Control R, and I think maybe 3 loop cuts in there will do the job. And if we just select these 2 on the side, and G and X to bring it out, and then just select this one on the side, G, X to bring that out a little bit more, and then we just do these pieces here, G, X, and just bring it out a little bit more to give it that bit of a curve all the way across there. So we've got our general shape of our book. And what I'm going to do first is I'm going to separate the pages from the cover so that we can work on the cover a lot easier. So with the pages selected, press P and selection, and that takes that into object mode as a separate object, so we can then hide that, take that out of the way. Now let's go into our cover model, and what I want to do is I want to fill the inside of this. So I'm going to go into edge mode. I'm going to select this top edge and this top edge and press F to fill them, and then again on the bottom piece just select those 2 edges and press F to fill them. And then if I can scroll in, I can press Alt left click to select that loop, and then if I press Shift and left click I can deselect those 2, because I can now press Control and E and bridge those edge loops. So we have a solid cover now. So it's time to give it a little bit more definition, a little more organic look to it, because nothing in real life is perfectly straight edged. So let's give this a few bumps and grooves and such. So let's first go into edit mode, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to select all of these faces and these faces. I'm going to switch to edge mode with them still selected, so I can then Alt Shift left click that loop and Alt Shift left click that loop and go into front orthographic mode, and I'm just going to move that along a little bit further because I think that needs to be a little bit thicker. I think about there should be enough, and I'm going to put 2 edge loops in here. Bring that one to about there, I think, because what I'm going to do, I'm going back into edge mode. I'm going to select these edges here and going close, Control and B, and just give it a single bevel. Now I'm going to interface mode. I'm going to select this piece and this piece, and in front orthographic press S and Z to scale on the Z axis and just bring it in just a touch so that when we look at it, we've got a dent along the spine, and that's where the spine opens up. Okay, so we got that now. Let's give it a bit less of an organic feel. So it's still in edge mode. I'm going to select all of these outer edges, if I can, on there, and these corner pieces here, and the back piece and the inner piece, and again on this side exactly the same. To that one, that one, and let's just make sure I haven't selected this right. That's fine. And I'm just going to press Control and B, and I'm going to bevel that, and I'm going to scroll it once, twice, and select that, and that gives it its nice smooth edged shape. And now I'm going to go back in. I'm going to put 3 edge loops across the top here, and I'm going to select that edge loop, press X and I to dissolve it, so we've got 2 edge loops with a larger space in the middle. And we'll do the same on the other direction, on top and on the bottom. Get rid of that. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to go into face mode. I'm going to select the top face, I'm going to select the bottom face, press 3 to go to side view, and I'm just going to press S and scale it out. And that gives it a bit of a bump in the shape. This is going to be a leather book. Leather's never flat. And I think that looks pretty good. Now, let's have a look to see how this looks with a subdivision surface. Let's go subdivision. And just knock that up to 2. Oh, that looks much better. That's giving it a nice sort of blended curve on there. Not too keen about this, so if I go into there, let's see, I'm going to hide that for now. And in edge mode, I'm going to select that edge and that edge. I'm just going to give it a tiny little bevel. Control B. Just bring it out and scroll it all the way down. Just a tiny little bevel like so. And now let's put that back on and see how that looks. And I think that looks a lot better like that. Yeah, that does look a lot better. So next we're going to work on our pages. So let's start by bringing back our pages, unhide that. And they look all nice and neat in there. Right, so select the pages and let's take a look. I'm going to go and I'm going to hide that book there just for now. And I'm going to take a look at this. Let's see. I'm going to select all of these edge loops. I'm going to press Control B. And I'm going to scroll up maybe. So I've got 4 edge loops. I'm going to try and get them quite even across there. So it should just about there. And let's put 2 edge loops in there and 2 edge loops in there. And what I'm going to do now is I'm going to select every other edge loop. So Alt select and then Shift Alt select every other of them. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to press S and I'm going to press Shift C to exclude the Z and just bring it in slightly, just like that. And I think that looks about right. Let's see what that looks like with a subdivision surface. I'm going to make it simple so that it's not deforming. Oops. I think maybe we could do without the subdivision. It doesn't seem to make any difference. So let's bring back our high poly book, our high poly cover, and now we have our high poly book. I'm going to apply that subdivision because I want to rejoin that to that piece. And now we can work on our low poly to get that to fit around the high poly. So So let's bring back our low poly and let's take a look. And I think that's pretty close. There's just a couple of things I need to do. And the first thing is make sure I've got my low poly selected, go into edit mode. I think we just need to give it a little bit of a bulge, just like we've done with the high poly. So let's Control R, 1, 2, and then get rid of this one. And then the same at this side, Control R, 1, 2, and get rid of this one. And in face mode, select the top and the bottom face, go into side view and just scale it up so that it matches. There we go. And the other thing we need to do is we thickened the spine on the high poly, so let's go back into object mode, select the high poly and hide it for now. Back in, and the same as we did on the high poly, let's select these four faces there, and four faces there. Whoops. And then in edge mode, Alt Shift these edges here. Excellent. Let's go into front view and bring back our high poly, and we can see the line through there. GX, just bring it along so it just fits in with that, and I think that should be about right. And there's just one final thing that I need to do with this, is to give the sharp edges just a little bit of a bevel, so that there's some geometry there for the normals to work with when I bake the normals. So all I'm going to do is go into edge mode. I'm going to select all around the top. Oops. And all on these sharp edges here, as I did before, all the way around, on there, and press Control B, just scroll it out a little bit and up one, just to give it a bit of definition, and that just gives it a little bit of geometry on there for the normals to apply to when I bake them on it. And I think it's time to UV unwrap. So let's switch to the UV editing tab and let's take a look. Well, the first thing I want to do, I want to separate the pages of the book. So I'm going to press 2 and I'm going to select the inner edge all the way around there and the back edge there and there. Press Control E and mark seam. And then what I want to do is right in the middle of this bevel, Alt left click and Shift Alt left click and Control E, mark seams. Now that should, if I select everything, press U and unwrap, that should bring these out quite nicely. And I think the edges, the book, the pages, I think that's perfect as it is. So let's hide those. Press 3 and clear everything. Press L, 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 H to hide, and select everything again and take a look at this. Now obviously this is a bit warped, and especially around this spine area. So let's just take a look at this spine and see what we can do. And I think what we need to do is Alt click that edge and Shift click there, and maybe up to the middle there. We do the same at the bottom, so there, whoops, there. Alt click that one. Let's have a look at the corner. I think maybe we need to just select that corner piece there. Yeah, just there. And the same on this piece, that corner piece there. And let's do the same on the other side. We want to Shift Alt click in there and then select these edges up to the center there, and then that piece there. And the same down the bottom. There, 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 and there. And again, that piece there. And that should... Actually, I'm thinking about it. It's that piece it should be, shouldn't it? Yeah, it should be that piece. There we go. If I press Control E and mark seam now, select everything and press unwrap, and that unwraps that much neater, but it can be a lot neater than that. And if I press 3 and select this face, that looks pretty straight, so I'm going to right click and press follow active quads, and now you can see it's all laid out perfectly neat and straight. And because we've unwrapped it with the mark seams where we put it, everything's nice and neat. So let's bring back the pages with alt H, select everything, we go to UV and average island scale just to make sure all the scales are correct. And now we can go UV and pack islands, and that's a pretty perfect unwrap, if you ask me. Nice and neat, there's plenty of space on there, and that should do really well in Substance Painter. So let's start the export. So for that, I'm going to switch back to layout so I can see it better, and make sure the low poly is selected. I'm going to press N just to double check the scale and the rotation's correct. File, export FBX. Now we need to find our mesh folder, and there we go. And I've already exported these at some point, testing. Just need to select the limit to selected objects option. So we only export the low poly, and then we just want to change the apply scalings to unit scales, and then scroll down and apply transform. And then we just need to select a name. I'm going to choose bank book low. You can change it in here and press export. And that's our low poly exported. So let's hide that and bring back the high poly. Select that. Go to File, Export, FBX. Select high poly. All our selections are already selected. Click Export. And now we're ready for Substance Painter. Okay, so now we're in Substance Painter. We'll bring our model in by going to File, New, and selecting the Select box. We choose our book underscore low and press Open. Now the document resolution I'm going to leave at 2048. For a small object like this in a scene, when you take it into Unity, you'll probably use a lot smaller textures. But I find it easier to create large textures and scale them down than it is to create small textures and scale them up. If you scale them up from smaller textures, you get blurred and pixelated images, which is not good. So always create in a larger resolution than you actually need, and then you can always change it as you need it. So let's click OK and see if our book appears, and there it is, our low poly book. Now we want it to look high poly, so let's go over to our layers. Let's delete that layer there. Then go to our texture settings. I'm going to add a channel to our texture settings. I'm going to add the ambient occlusion there, and then I'm going to click Bake Mesh Maps. And that brings up our baking window. I'm going to change the output size to 2048. I'm going to go down to our high definition meshes and select this little button here and choose our high model and click open. And now, for now, all I'm going to change here is the anti-aliasing. I'm going to change that to 4x4 because I want to see what the frontal distance and max rear distance looks like. And now I just click bake selected texture and sit back and wait for it to bake. Okay, so now we have our baked normals, and as you can see, all the detail from the pages has been added onto our normals. It's not perfect, but I think it will suffice for now. I think that does the job. As long as we got the detail there, and we got our ridge along the edge there, we got our pages, individual pages. I could have probably added a few more pages, but I think that looks fine. Okay, so Now we start painting, and this should be a fairly simple task. First things first, let's find a leather for our cover. And if we go down to our search bar there with our material tab selected, let's type in a leather, and there we have quite a few different leathers, and I think maybe the leather bag might be quite nice. Let's see. And yes, that's a very booky sort of leather. I like that. I very much like that. So now we just have to tell it where it needs to go on the book. And obviously it needs to go on the cover and not the pages. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a folder. I'm going to drag that lever into the folder. I'm going to rename that folder to cover. And that will contain all of our textures, etc. for our cover. So let's give that a black mask. With the mask selected, go over to our polygon fill tool. And let's take a look. Maybe using our UV area, that's the one. Using our UV fill. And what that does is that only fills the area within the UV map that you've selected. So there, just the whole cover has been selected. And that's pretty much all we need to do with that cover. It looks great. It's pretty good. Might give it a little bit of wear later on. But for now, let's create another folder, and we will call that pages. And we need to create a texture for the pages. Now I don't have a paper texture, but I can fake one. So let's clear this filter and let's have a look at our other textures. We have some cloth textures here. I'm just trying to remember where I saw it. Fabric, there we go. Fabric bamboo. Now this, when I drop it onto here, doesn't look much right now, but if I was to go try planar projection, and that would reduce it a little bit, and then scale, and we'll change that scale to something like 20, it gives it a very papery sort of look, and I think that looks quite good. I think that would look quite good in the pages there. So maybe give it a bit more, a bit less. Yeah, that would do. So now let's put that into our pages folder, right click pages, add black mask. And now what I want to do, the same as I did before with the UV fill, just check each of the pieces of the book like so. And there we go. And then what I want to do is select the fabric bamboo. I'm going to turn on the ambient occlusion channel, and that should just darken it up a little bit, but it may be a bit too dark. Let's have a look. No, that looks fine. Okay, so there is our pretty basic, simply painted book. As you can see, it's really easy to do. And let's go to our leather and add the AO on that. See if that helps. It could do. Maybe a little bit too dark again. So let's get rid of that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to also add another fill layer in that folder. And I'm going to go to my smart masks. No, my smart masks. I'm going to search for edge. And let's see. Edge dirty, edge rust, edge blur, edge scratched. Let's try that fabric edge, and we'll drop that onto our fill layer there, like so. Okay, and I think that's not too bad. So let's change the colour on that, and we're going to go pick and just put a slightly different colour to that, like so. There you go, and that just defines the edges a little bit, gives it a bit more sort of worn look to the edge there. You can do much more than this. There's so much more you can do in Substance Painter. It's actually such a wonderful thing. But I think we're going to leave that there for now, because I think that's quite good. I'm just going to change the colour, I think, of the lever. Let's give it a reddy colour, more red colour, a bit more red, and bring it to about there, should do. And that also brings out the definition in there, so let's bring that down to a bit more of a reddy colour and just bring it in a bit more. There we go. And that yeah, and I think that's done. As you can see, the Substance Painter is such a simple program, such an easy program. I mean, you can go far more advanced than this, but for little objects like this, it's so easy to just slap a texture on. So let's export that texture now. So export texture, and it brings up the export texture panel. Let's choose our template, and what I want to do is I want to create Unity Universal Render Pipeline. That should, sorry, metallic standard. And let's find a folder to put this in. And I'm just going to drop it in that textures folder there. File type, PNG, and size 2048, and padding, I'm going to change that to dilation plus transparent, and then I'm going to hit export, and that has exported all my textures. So let's close this down and go back to Blender. So here we are back in Blender. Let's hide our high poly, bring back our low poly. I'm going to select it, and I'm going to go into shading because I need to add a new texture. And if I select the BSDF shader there, press Ctrl Shift and T, I can then search for my textures, highlight them, and click Principal Texture Setup, and it puts them all in the right places with just one change I need to make, and that's taking the alpha from the metallic and put it into the roughness value just there. And as you can see, with our lights turned on when rendered, that's how our book looks in Blender. And that's where we're going to end in this video. In the next video, I'll be creating various clutter assets, such as paper, folded paper, crumpled paper, and such, for our abandoned school that we're slowly creating. I hope you've enjoyed this video. I hope you've learned something from it. If you have, please spam that like button. It really helps the algorithm. If you want to see more, hit the subscribe button. And as usual, if you want a notification when I upload a video, hit that notification bell. Thank you very much for joining me, and I hope to see you in the next video.